The top 100 agents are the best of the best, listing and selling more than any other agent in Australia.
Sold. Congratulations, sir. Well bought.
These are the practices, actions and beliefs of the most successful agents in Australian real estate. Raw, honest and completely uncut. Welcome to REB's Secrets of the Top 100 Agents.
Well, g'day everyone, it's Liam here. Now, if you're starting to feel a little bit overwhelmed with your compliance to-do list and a little bit irritated with everything that's coming through the pipeline to make sure that you are compliant, well, I have a solution for you. It's Visible, VISIBL, an end-to-end compliance platform that's been built specifically for Aussie real estate. Visible makes it simple to get your agency compliant. So whether it's minimizing the paperwork headache or handling AUSTRAC enrollment, risk assessment and policy, customer verifications, team training, and more, it's a platform built for the industry and built to actually make compliance simple. Check out Visible at visibl.com.au.
Hello and welcome to the REB Podcast. I'm Emilie Lauer, REB Deputies Editor, and today I am joined by elders, trainers, mentor and coach Sebastian Bonaccorso to discuss why every great sale starts with the right appraisal. Today we'll explore why pricing accurately has never been more important, how it shapes every negotiation, and the practical lessons agents can use to achieve the best outcome. Sebastian, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Amy, for having me on board today.
Yes, we're excited to have you here in the studio. Look, Sebastian, you've got an amazing career, 40 years in real estate, 11,000 auctions. You've experienced every market. What's your take on today's market and what skills do agents need to succeed?
We're certainly in a market that's challenging. I'm not going to hide the fact that things have changed. But this is a great market for experienced, well-skilled agents to see opportunity and do well. A marketplace that we've seen over my career several times. There's been cycles in real estate that have gone up, gone down, and some have leveled out. So I'm actually seeing this market as a really good opportunity for good agents.
So look, plenty of the new agents that started, let's say during COVID or just after, they've only seen an up market. It's maybe their first time experiencing a down market. What is going to set them apart and how can they navigate that?
Again, it's one of those things that, if people ask me, would you do the hard work first and the easy work later, or do the easy work first and the hard work later? Most people that are in a marketplace now that don't or haven't experienced a hard market are going to find this very difficult. They're going to find it a big challenge because when the market is really good, you don't have to be a great agent. Sometimes a lot of those agents will publicise they've done well, but have they done well or has the market done well for them? So in this current market, we need to see agents really upskill and get better at what they do.
And appraisal is one of the tools they need to master, especially nowadays with pricing ever changing. Would you say that it's actually the most important skills to have right now?
I think it's one of the very important skills. In this marketplace, agents can't walk into a listing opportunity and buy the listing with an over-inflated price. There is a fine line because at the end of the day, all vendors have a dream price. Agents' perception is to really deliver that price in a format that actually delivers reality as well. And there's a very fine line in that.
Yeah, managing vendors' expectation is also one of the key there, yeah?
100%. Look, the vendor, when they make a decision to meet the market and decide to sell their property, they've got to be comfortable knowing that the agent has done everything possible to achieve the best price for them.
So what are some of the preparation agents need to do to get the right appraisal and ultimately get the listings just to make sure they've got the right price for then the campaign?
Looking into it for 40 years plus, whether we get the price right or wrong is sometimes, again, a fine line. Because as you know, there is no set retail price for any real estate. So all we can base our indications or our estimations are on comparable sales. And as you know, there's no two identical properties in any market. But we've got to look at factors that align properties in some way and give the vendor some indications based on those comparables. But we know once we get past the comparable levels, it's going to get down to competition, emotion of the buyer, and the need of the buyer to purchase.
So how do you manage all of this, when your vendor is expecting a certain price and the market is changing? Look, we see months on months the price is going down, and now markets are also very different. One suburbs could be a certain price and the street next to it, which is another suburbs, could be another price. How do you educate your sellers around all of this?
It's not so much an education process, but I think more a management process. If we wind it back, when the agent actually presents at a listing presentation, the agent who actually tells the biggest lie in the past has got the business because they've overinflated the price to win the business. More so today, listing opportunities and buyer intervention is more transparent. The same information is available to a vendor as it is a buyer. And I think preparation is vital. When you go into a listing opportunity today, your preparation has to be spot on. Because not only do you need to know the indicators of what a comparable sale is, but you need to know the area, the type of market you're going to be processing the property through, who your potential buyers are going to be, and what kind of competition has arrived on similar properties that have been sold over the previous few months.
So know your patch, basically, yeah?
Definitely, 100% right, Amy.
So look, I know that you're going to appraisal with some of your agents. What are some of the mistakes you see, I want to say, the youngster make, and how can our listeners avoid them?
I think under preparation, and I think over assumption. And when I talk about under preparation, these days, you can Google who the vendor is. You can look at recent sales. You can see what's been sold, what's on the market, how many days it's been on the market. You can research what properties have sold, how many potential bidders there were, and what properties have passed in, and how long properties have been on the market not selling. So preparation is vital. Also understanding the logistics of the property as well. What can be developed on that particular property? What kind of frontage the property has? Is it in a flood zone? There's a lot of information you can prepare. And I think if you come into a listing preparation with a good attitude, that really stands out. When I talk about over-assumption, I've seen over my times many agents have gone into a listing assuming they're going to get the business. And sometimes they let their guard down, thinking that because they're a nice agent, they're going to win the business, where the competition's come in and gone in, stepped up their game and presented a really good strategy, and they've missed out.
Yeah, and I think, especially in today's market, when listings are a bit more scarce, it's just being nice is not enough anymore.
Well, I think, we're in the people's business, so we have to be nice for starters.
For
and
sure.
I think, the agent that goes into a listing thinking he's going to be the only agent is also assuming.
Yeah, because you're never the only one.
Well, in most cases, an agent will try, an owner will keep you honest. They'll call somebody else in.
Yeah, definitely. Look, some agents will still try to overprice. What happens to a campaign that has been overpriced, and what are the risks for your seller?
Well, the risk to the agent is that he's going to be spending a lot of work, putting a lot of work into a property that's more than likely not going to sell. Now, this is a marketplace where we've seen properties sell. The days on market have blown out from 28 to 45 to 60 days. And in some cases, properties are going to 2 or 3 agencies before they get sold. So the agent's going to be buying himself a lot of work with potential no sale. What it does cost the vendor is opportunity, because if vendors are selling to repurchase another property, they should be accepting the market price and then buying in the same market at a deflated price as well. Our job is to get the best price, but there's a fine line in making sure that you're overprotecting price when it's not there.
How does appraisal and having that first initial price impacts negotiation throughout, the sales campaign and then the final, selling process?
I think it's important that the agent gets pricing right up front, And when I talk about pricing, I'm not talking about narrowing it down to 1% or 2%, because as you know, there is a lot of input from buyers on an emotional basis as well. So I say to agents, you've really got to have a range of buyers that you're going to be attracting through here. First of all, decide on who your target markets are going to be. Work out whether that market's going to be more emotional or be buying from the pocket. Work out a strategy to attract those buyers. Once we've attracted those buyers, our job is to find out what they want to pay for the property. Our job as agents is not to sell at that price, but to obtain a better price through our involvement in negotiation.
And I guess also the campaigns get shorter if you get the right price.
100%. Look, there's no textbook answer when is the right day to sell a property on. It could be the first day, it could be the 50th day. In most cases, if you look at averages, most properties in the previous market have sold within 28 days. Is it potentially possible today? Yes. If the agent has a database of buyers that are quite well qualified, that have emotionally missed out on other properties, there's an opportunity that the right buyer will show up in the first week of your campaign.
Yeah, it depends on their motivation at the end of the day, yeah? When it comes to appraisal, there's certain technique. What is your top tip for our listeners to get, that right appraisal and basically win the listing?
We're looking for agents at the moment to come on board. We're expanding our business at the moment. I'm back with Elders. I've had a short stint out of Elders and we're back in it. I love being in red. But, one of the things that we talk to our agents about is that you've got to make sure that you have a really good plan. So when you come into a listing presentation, you've got to make sure that you've got a strategy and a plan that's going to deliver the vendor the best result.
Yeah, and, still be nice.
And be nice, that's correct.
Same question when it comes to negotiation techniques, because negotiating right now in a buyer's market is going to be key. Like we've seen some data where vendor discounts are going up. So people will be trying their luck and get the prices down, yeah? So you've got like that little bit of vendors want the best price, buyers want the best price, and you're going to have to meet somewhere in the middle. What's your top tips when it comes to negotiation in that specific market?
Ask questions. Okay. At the end of the day, we align ourselves with the vendor because that's who pays the bill at the end of the day. So we're on the same team as the vendor, but obviously there is also an opportunity that we've got to be encouraging buyers to also be making offers on properties as well. This is the marketplace you really got to be experienced in negotiation because the information at the moment is available to all, both vendors and purchasers. Buyers are taking in an opportunity that this is an opportunity market. So they're going to be coming in at their lowest possible offer. The agent's duty is to make sure that that buyer pays a fair or a good price for the property. Now, what that end up price is going to be, we won't know until we sit at the table and have that negotiation. But I've had many a times where a buyer has said, this is my best offer, and I'm not going to pay any more. And I've seen it at auctions where that buyer turns up on the day and pays $100,000 more. So the skill level has to be right on to get that buyer to pay the best price.
How do you manage that this is my best offer, counter technique in a way, yeah? If a buyer tells you that, how do you counteract it without ultimately going to auction?
Well, I think the agent's got to make a clean-minded decision. Is it a really good price for the property? Because if it is a really good price for the property, the vendor should be considering that offer. If the vendor in his heart of hearts knows that the property has more value in it, then he should be really working hard to get that buyer to pay a better price.
Just communication, I guess.
Communication's important, yes.
Look, you've mentioned it, like buyers and sellers both have more information to their fingertips now. You've got, all those reports. You can go, online. You can even ask AI to give you comparable. You've been in the game for 40 years. How has this changed, the way, we do business now in real estate?
Transparency. Transparency for me is everything today. We should be able to walk into a listing presentation and deliver the same 3 comparable properties to the vendor, to the buyers. And that transparency people feel comfortable with. And I think that transparency what gets people to make a decision a lot cleaner and a lot easier.
Yeah, look, it's real estate agents are on for the vendors, they're on for the sellers, but we are today in a buyer's market, and your buyers of today are your sellers of tomorrow.
100%.
How do you nurture those buyers and make sure that they get also the best outcome without, like dropping your seller in a way?
Yeah, I often excuse myself with buyers at an auction. When I've I've created pain for a buyer by extracting the best price, and they've eventually bought the property. The first thing I say is, look, you've got to excuse me for this because my job is to get the vendor the best price. But you've got to understand that one day when you go to sell, you're going to want me on your team as well.
Look, let's talk a little bit through auctions right now.
Mm-hmm.
Auctions numbers are dwindling. It's we're below 50% clearance rates at the moment. How do you manage this as an auctioneer? And look, I know that more people are going through private treaty. Is auction still the best way to sell a property nowadays?
Again, when things aren't heading the way people want to see things, the first thing they blame is the system rather than the process. Our particular office at the moment has over an 80% success rate in the last 3 months. And a lot of it has got to do with getting the strategy right. So getting pricing right, managing vendors' expectations correctly, and working twice as hard to find multiple buyers for a property. And whether we sell the property prior or on auction day or shortly after, managing the whole process is something you've got to have experience in doing. The biggest issue we have at the moment is a lot of agents that haven't been through a marketplace which is challenging have run processes before where they've turned up, put a property on the marketplace and let the market do the work. Anybody can do that. In this market, you need to be good at what you do to get a result.
How are you training those agents? How are you teaching them how to be, great in that specific market? Because it's definitely harder.
100%. Look, I'm in a very unique position. The direct team I have working with me have been working with me for 15 to 30 years. So we all have our experience on our side. But anyone new that would join our team would benefit from that. Our experience in negotiation, in reading the market, reading buyers, understanding the vendor's needs, I think is really up there. And I think you need to have that experience and that understanding of skill level to really put a deal together today.
So give me a little bit of insight there for our listeners. Let's say you've got a youngish agents that come in. What is the top 3 things you would, teach them now? And, how can they just listen to this and just, action them straight away?
I love the word listen. And I think the reason God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth is to use it in proportion, right? So ask questions, but also listen and understand what one client needs, what one's client's needs are and what another are. So really listening is a very important part. 2, remaining humble. At the end of the day, we're not paid actors. We're real estate agents. We should be humble in what we do and be thankful for every opportunity that we have. The third thing is I'd be really focusing on my skill level today, really focusing on the needs and the wants of understanding what a client needs and what their wants are. And if you can understand that opportunity and put it together, you'll be a lot better person.
Fantastic. How do you upskill?
There's some great trainers out there at the moment, whether it's working alongside a very experienced agent, whether you, Google, YouTube, whatever you like, there's plenty of opportunities. But whatever training you do, just use that training and make it your own. Vendors, buyers, they know if you're a textbook agent. People don't want to read scripts and become a scripted agent. They want to become a person. So learn skills, but become a person as well. I probably would rather add something else. I want to talk about this market and having to work really hard, because in the past, a lot of agents have been able to get through doing well, doing very little, and the market's made them look good. This is the market where you've really got to step up. In other words, you've got to really roll your sleeves up, prepared to put the early morning starts, sometimes put the late finishes on, You've got to make every minute, every hour, every day accountable. And I think if you can actually focus your day on the processes and strategies and making sure that you're putting lots of small rocks and the big rocks, you're going to become way ahead.
Yeah, do you think that this market is really going to separate the good operators?
It already is. Look, there's already talk of agents leaving the industry because it's gotten too hard. This is a marketplace where you've got to stick with it. There's always this thing that a lot of agents have difficulty dealing with. It's what we call lag. Sometimes you can do a lot of work and it doesn't show up to 60, 90 days later, right? And this is a marketplace where you've got to be really good at handling that, because there are opportunities that we nurture for 60, 90 days that don't come to fruition. And in this marketplace, it might be 120 days or longer. So you've got to be very good at making sure that you show up and you put the effort in and you stay on track doing accountable activities that get monitored. Because if it doesn't get measured, it's very hard to succeed.
Yeah, you gotta have to, work your buyers list, but also keep in touch with your sellers, at least people that could potentially become, leads.
100%. Look, this is not a market to be focusing on just how many listings you've got, how many appraisals you've done. I'll be more focused on how many calls you're actually making, how many connections you are making with the marketplace, how many people you're actually nurturing, because I think the agent who's got the biggest reach is going to be the biggest winner.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about, being the face of your community as well.
Definitely. Real estate's all about perception, believe it or not. Like if you're not seen, if you're a secret agent, nobody's going to find you.
I like that. An agent ninja.
Yeah, something like that.
Great. One more question is, what are some of the mistakes you see new agents make when it comes to this market and the way they try to gain listings?
I think they go in there with very much a commission breath attitude. So in other words, they're very focused just on winning the business, but not understanding the client's needs. And also coming up with a strategy which is going to be bulletproof. Come up with a process and a strategy so when the vendor is sleeping at night, they should be knowing that you're doing everything possible to get them a result. For me, that speaks volumes.
Fantastic. Well, on those wise words, I think that's all we've got for today. Sebastian, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Fantastic.